the Chief Executive Officer from Transend Australia via video conference. Is he here?
Yeah.
Good morning and thank you. During your evidence today, we just ask that you please refrain from using unparliamentary language such as swearing or offensive terms. This sometimes comes in when witnesses are repeating something they heard or read, and unfortunately that is unparliamentary. So I ask you to be conscious of that, please. Jeremy, I also ask you to reconsider speaking about and naming other persons who may not wish to be identified in the public space. If you were intending to do so, I'm just trying to get ahead of you. If that was the case, I'm not suggesting it was. I now invite you to make an opening statement of about 5 minutes, after which the committee members will have some questions for you. When you first speak, if you could just identify yourself by name and title for the purposes of Hansard who are recording these proceedings. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the invitation to speak to you today. My name is Jeremy Wiggins. I'm the CEO of Transend Australia. We're a national organisation that works with families, parents and carers who have transgender, gender diverse or non-binary children. We've been supporting families across Australia for 10 years and very much appreciate the invitation to speak to you today. The families that seek support from us, especially those who are based in Queensland, have expressed to me the critical importance of the law providing a more accessible and modern way to ensure identification documents reflects the identity of their trans children. In the case of the communities that we serve, the birth certificate is often the only form of identification able to be used for children under 18. We have received requests to advocate for Queensland families who have children under the age of 18, but also from families who have trans children that are over 18. I'm speaking on behalf of these families and the trans young people of Queensland who want the right to update their identity documents to simply be able to live their lives. These requests come from a deep desire for Queensland to join the chorus of other Australian states and territories who have already undergone birth certificate reform. Families in Queensland are currently facing complex situations, such as trying to enrol their children into junior community sports, such as swimming or basketball, or even just to enrol their children into school with documentation that doesn't match who they are. This causes immense distress for families, and in particular for vulnerable trans young people who just want a fair go to participate fully in life and to enjoy the same activities as their peers. It is highly important at this stage in a young person's life that they feel nurtured, affirmed and accepted for who they are. And without a birth certificate listing the sex that aligns with their gender identity, it jeopardises their safety and privacy and restricts their ability to be a whole person living in the world, participating in life. We feel the current draft of the bill includes appropriate provisions and necessary checks and balances to ensure an application to amend the sex listed on a birth certificate is a legitimate application. I'd like to ensure this committee hears from the people who it matters to the most, a family with a young trans child. It's their voices that are so rarely heard or listened to, and I would appreciate your attention to their experience. From the parents, we just want our daughter to grow up. We just want her to thrive and survive. To go to school, have hobbies, have friends, and live her life. To grow up safely, accepted and respected by the community of Queensland she so loves. This bill makes that easier for her and other kids just like her. It stops her from being procedurally outed against her will by a birth certificate that does not accurately reflect her gender. It's not everything, but it's a start. Thank you for seeing our children and showing them they have a place here as themselves, a place to belong here in Queensland. From the brother, I wish we didn't have to do this. All any of us want is to just be who we are, and it should be easy. It's easy for the rest of us. I want it to be the same for her. I want her to be seen for who she is and to be safe. I don't want her to be bullied. Not everyone may be ready to accept her, but it's not really their business. I just want the government to see her as I do, as my sister, and if that means giving her a proper certificate, then she should have that. And from the daughter who is trans. I was born a girl. I have always been a girl, and I will always be a girl. My family and friends love and support me for who I am. I am proud of who I am, but every time I see my wrong name, I feel a shock and I flinch. It's wrong. It's not who I am. It's not who I ever was. I was so happy the day our Medicare card changed and I could go to the doctor with the right name. It also felt so good the day my birth certificate was updated with the right name, but it also really hurt to see that it still had the wrong sex on it. I knew that the school was still going to see that. I didn't join a sports club because they would have seen it. I am getting ready for high school and I know they'll see it too. I want my birth certificate to not just have the right name on it, but the right sex. I am female. I want to be seen for who I am and who I always have been, just like all the other girls. Please make this change to help me and the other young trans people like me who have less support. Help us to just be ourselves. Thank you for listening to me. I'd like to thank that Queensland family for sharing their story and to all the other Queensland families who have shared their stories with us. I'd like to also thank the Parliament for this opportunity to feedback on the bill, our submission, and through this hearing. I look forward to seeing the bill progress. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Laura?
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you for sharing those very personal accounts. I just wanted to put to you, so one of the, there are many objections to this bill, but one of, I guess, the more objective objections is that Part 5 allows for a historical record to be changed. And so some of the solutions or some of the other proposals that have been put forward is that the historical record could remain and there might be another section in the birth certificate that allows for the change in gender, or there might be a separate birth certificate altogether that allows for the historical record to remain and a new record to be created, which the transgender person could then use moving forward. I'm after your views on some of these other suggested ways to sort of work with Part 5.
Well, my understanding would be similar to is that when a new birth certificate is issued, it issued the sex marker.
I'm sorry, I missed that. There's a little bit of buffering, Jeremy. Do you mind just repeating? Did Hansard catch that? No. Do you mind just repeating what you just said? I'm sorry. It's just buffering a little bit and we missed that first sentence.
Yeah, we just missed what you said, basically, sorry, because of, as the Deputy Chair pointed out, there's just a bit of buffering. Do you mind repeating it, Jeremy, please?
Sorry, it is buffering for me too.
Okay. Could you just try again, Jeremy, and if the problem persists, we'll recruit IT to try and identify what's going on. But sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, I do apologise. I hope that you can hear me clearly now. Could you please repeat that question? It has come through a bit difficult here.
Sure. So whilst there's been many objections to this bill, one of the, I would say, more objective objections is that Part 5 allows for a historical record to be changed. And so some of the other proposals that have been put to the committee are that the birth certificate could contain another section that allows for change in gender, or that a separate historical record could be created at a certain point in time that allows for the transgender person to be able to use that, but whilst also maintaining any historical record previously created. I'm just after your views on the alternative proposals that have been put forward to try to maintain the objectives of Part 5, but also the integrity of historical records.
Thank you. I heard that clearly. I appreciate the repeating the question. I hope that you hear me clearly. For trans people, it's really important that the certificate is updated, often without a history of a record before. It still poses a risk to trans people. It jeopardizes them being outed against their will and having an unnecessary history listed on the birth certificate.
Thank you.
John?
At the moment, thanks, Chair.
You good, John?
I'm okay at the moment, thank you.
Jonty?
Thanks. Good morning, Jeremy. My question was really just to ask you to share with us some of the experiences and I guess the issues and barriers that trans people experience when their birth certificate doesn't reflect their gender identity or contains their dead name. I mean, you have touched on that, but I guess I wanted to give you the opportunity to share any other cases that might illuminate to the committee your views.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I have a really clear example of how this plays out for a young person in Queensland. An example is when a student is doing their NAPLAN test and they get their one-time password code to log into the system, which is projected onto the screen in front of the entire class. They have all of their names listed and they have all of the details, and it was projected onto the screen, so outing a young person in front of the entire class. That's one example. Another example is trying to enroll a child into school and the school not necessarily having the skills or knowledge or capability to manage a trans kid being enrolled when the sex marker is not aligned with their gender identity. It would be far simpler for a family to be able to update the birth certificate to have the sex marker aligned with their gender identity to enrol the child into school, rather than have to deal with a school that may not have the skills or be equipped to manage that process appropriately. It's also the original identification document, so it makes it challenging, for example, to get other documentation if that's the first one, because it's based on that original documentation. There's many other examples, but I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Sorry, Sandy, I forgot to come to you before Jonty.
That's all right. Thank you, Chair. Jeremy, good morning. And yes, again, thank you for sharing. Just so that I can get a bit of clarity, because I am having trouble hearing some of your responses. The member for Currumbin, she spoke about the, different options. So I suppose after hearing some of the examples, you spoke of NAPLAN and putting up on the screen, if the system was changed where it was gender identification documents used by schools, etc., would you then see that there would still be an issue? Instead of a birth certificate being utilised, a gender identification certificate?
We do still see it as an issue because we do not necessarily want there to be a separation between gender identity and sex marker. For our community, it is important that the two are aligned and recognised as equal and just. To have a separate identity document for the purpose of affirming a gender identity for a minority, it seems as though it would be a discriminatory process to make a minority group get certain documentation unnecessarily, when we could just align it with similar legislation in other states and territories that have passed this, where an application can be made to amend the sex marker on a birth certificate.
Chair, can I just do a follow-up, or we're out of time?
Sandy, I'm not sure how many more questions you got, but this will be, could you round it up as quickly as you could?
Sure. Jeremy, I'm not sure whether you've seen some of the submissions, but one of the concerns is regarding separating the gender and sex and the definitions. And it's been, you would have heard even Professor Parkinson speak on this and legally and what it does. How do you see, is there in any way an option that can alleviate that argument and the discrepancy on that sex is as we're born is physical, and gender is how we identify. Can you see any solution there?
Well, I think the solution is about respecting the self-determination of the individual and it being person-centred. I'm a citizen of Australia, obviously, and I live in Victoria, and the Victorian legislation removed the unnecessary requirements to have invasive procedures on reproductive organs and has similar caveats around having a stat dec or a supporting statement of who has known someone for 12 months. And the sex marker is then amended to either male or female or a descriptor. To have sex assigned at birth option and a gender identity that would be different still will pose the same issues and risks to the safety of trans people.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you much.
Thank you. That brings this part of the hearing to a conclusion.